Welcome to our explainer, brought to you by DailyCaring.com. You know, when you're a caregiver, you're so often focused on the here and now. But today, we're going to talk about something different, one of the most lasting gifts you can help a loved one create, a clear, thoughtful estate plan. And it all starts with one of the most important choices: who will be the executor?
Look, talking about this stuff can feel a little awkward, right? But it's so important to remember what it's really about. This is not just some legal chore you have to check off a list. It's a true act of care. It makes sure someone's wishes are honored, and believe me, it brings so much relief to the whole family when the time comes.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down for you. First, we'll talk about the why, the legacy. Then we'll get into the executor's actual job description. After that, we'll cover how to find the right person, explore some other options, and finally talk about how to keep that choice up to date. Let's dive in. Okay, so first things first, let's really frame this conversation. Picking an executor is absolutely essential. A good choice makes sure a person's wishes are carried out, but maybe even more importantly, it helps avoid those awful, expensive family fights down the line. It's all about creating clarity during what's already a really emotional time. So now we get why it's so important. Let's get into the what. Because before you can even think about picking the right person, you got to know what you're actually asking them to do. So what is an executor's job, really?
At its core, it's actually pretty simple. The executor is the person, or sometimes an institution, who's in charge of executing the plan. They're the ones who carry out the wishes that are laid out in the will. Think of them as the temporary manager of the estate after someone passes.
And what's on that manager's to-do list? Well, it really boils down to two main jobs. First, they have to pull together all the assets and use that money to pay off any final bills, taxes, or debts. Then, and only after all the creditors are paid, they distribute what's left over to the people who are named in the will. Now, this is not just a casual favor. There's a really serious legal standard here. It's called a fiduciary duty, and that is a big deal. It legally requires them to be completely honest, to be diligent, and to always act in the best interest of the estate. It's a huge position of trust. So, keeping that huge level of trust and responsibility in mind, how in the world do you find the right person for a job like this? Let's get into some practical advice on how to spot that perfect candidate. The good news, they don't have to be some Wall Street genius or a high-powered lawyer, but they do need a good head on their shoulders. You're looking for someone who gets the basics of finance, is generally responsible with their own money, and is super organized. And this one is key. You want someone who isn't afraid to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, and then go ask an expert for help. Okay, this is a big one that people can forget, but it is so important. Their availability in the future. I mean, think about it. If you pick someone who's the same age or older, or maybe someone who's not in the best health, there's a real chance they might not be able to do the job when needed. That can cause all sorts of legal headaches. So choosing someone a bit younger is often a really smart move. And since life is, unpredictable, you absolutely, positively have to have a backup plan, a plan B, and maybe even a plan C. You can name a second and third person in line, or you can even let your top choice pick their own successor, if they can't do it. And as a final safety net, you can name a corporate executor. The bottom line is, you never ever want to leave this role empty.
Of course, not every family or estate is simple. For bigger estates or families with, let's say, complex dynamics, you might need to think about some different strategies. So let's look at a couple of those right now.
You might be thinking, hey, why don't I just name two of my kids to do it together? Be fair, right? And on the surface, it makes sense. The work gets shared and big decisions don't all fall on one person. But the downsides can be huge. What happens when they just can't agree? Sometimes trying to be fair by naming everyone actually ends up causing way more conflict than it solves.
So, the other big option is a corporate executor. Think a bank or a trust company. And there are definite trade-offs here. An individual, like a family member, brings that personal touch and is usually cheaper. But a corporate executor, they bring complete and total impartiality. They're built to handle messy, complex situations. The catch is, their fees are usually higher, and while it's not going to be personal, it's policy-driven.
And here's a perfect example of when that impartiality is worth its weight in gold. In blended families or second marriages, you can have worries about fairness. Will my stepmom favor her own kids over me? A neutral corporate executor just wipes that fear off the table. They have no skin in the game. They just follow the will to the letter, ensuring everyone is treated exactly as intended.
All right, last big topic. Let's talk about making sure this plan actually stays useful. Choosing an executor is not a set-it-and-forget-it kind of deal. Life changes, relationships change, and your estate plan has to change right along with them.
Think of this plan as a living document. You should give it a checkup every few years and especially after big life events. A divorce might make an ex-spouse an awkward choice. If a relationship sours, you might need to take someone out. But just as important, if you repair a relationship, you might want to add them back in. And of course, if your chosen executor's health changes, you need to revisit the plan.
So let's just circle back to where we started. By helping a loved one through this process, or by doing it for yourself, you're doing so much more than just signing some papers. You are actively preventing future heartache. You're building a bridge of clarity for the people you love. It really is an act of care that will echo for generations to come.
So I'll leave you with this question. The peace of mind that you can help create today, well, that's going to be a lasting comfort for your entire family tomorrow. For more helpful resources for caregivers, please visit us at DailyCaring.com.